experience where two have truly become one. God is at the center of us, our purpose and vision in His love. We dedicate our today, tomorrow, and always to You, our King. Bless and let there be love in our home. The marriage experience ordained by You alone. The marriage experience. The marriage experience ordained by You alone.
Welcome to the Marriage Experience program with Ayo Kunle and Boston A. Santos, where they explore what it means to cultivate a God-centric marriage, delivering realistic and biblical wisdom, pointers, and insights from couples and individuals on the marriage journey. Join them today as they share some insights.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're ever so delighted that you're joining us. It's so good to be here, and we welcome you again to another episode of Marriage Experience program. At the risk of it sounding cliche, it's truly the highlight of our week.
Yes, of course, it is. It is the highlight of our week, and we keep saying that every week. And yet we're not ashamed to say so. We truly look forward to these few minutes.
Absolutely.
You know, we get to spend with you. Our goal and our prayer around these conversations is to inspire you to fully embrace God's truth as the yardstick for your marriages.
Yeah. And, you know, it's always a delight and honor to partner with you on your marriage journey. As always, the marriage experience is signposting you to the truth, so you see it for yourselves and work it out as it applies to your own marriage.
Exactly. And the truth we continue to gain from the Word of God will be our roadmap to walking in freedom and avoiding Satan's pitfalls, particularly in our marriages.
And in the almost 1 year that we've been doing this, it will be 1 year in May, that we've been doing this, we've learned so much that we wished we had known when we started our family.
Of course, it's never too late.
Obviously, it's never too late. We've had several conversations over the past 6 weeks, and today we're going to be recapping the core messages in these conversations. We visited and looked to answering the question of what God means by godly children. We were talking about raising godly children or godly seed. We looked at the characteristics of and what parents should do to partner with God. A godly seed, we saw, is a godlike one. And who's a godlike one? It's a godlike one is God's special possession. They're rulers and they're judges. And the Bible tells us about godly seed in Psalm 127 verses 3-5. It says, behold, children are an inheritance of Yahweh. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. How blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them. They will not be ashamed when they speak with enemies in the gate. We advocated for couples to gain this understanding through earnest discussions before entering into the covenant of marriage, as this would help them tailor their parenting skills after the will of God. And we did look at these scriptures that would help us as parents to see our parenting as a sacred responsibility, which we must enter into with understanding. This way we'll be participating and partnering with God in His creative process. Yes.
Now, we understand creation as twofold. You know, first of all, God first created the essence of our children. Our part now is, after that creation, of course, is to form them so they become the people God created and called them to be.
So, you know, kind of like Genesis 1 as opposed to, well, not as opposed, but Genesis 1 going alongside with Genesis 2.
Yes. You know, and as parents, our responsibility is to call out of our children the essence of God in them. You know, our children have the life force of God in them. as being created in his image, and as parents, as parents, we shape them into those people who would enforce the will of God on the earth.
And we also looked at Proverbs 22 verse 6, where we read about raising godly seeds, the expanded Bible version. Many people may not know this version of the Bible. I did say I was passionate or partial towards this because this was my professor at seminary who authored edited this with another colleague. So this version says that train children to live the right way in their or his, that is God, referring either to children or to God, and when they are old, they will not stray or depart from it. We saw these principles there. First, to train our children up in their own path. That is no cookie cutter strategy for raising our children. So you cannot raise child one the same way you're going to raise child two, because they're two different personalities. We talked extensively about personalities last year. Now, the prophetic word over John the Baptist was not the same that was spoken over Jesus. So, there's they're completely different. So the approach to raising each child would be different. And second, to train them according to God's path, not even according to how we feel they ought to go. I mean, being raised in Nigeria, you're either supposed to be an engineer, a doctor, or whatever. But what is the path that God has mapped for every child?
Yeah, and in addition to that, when we're talking about each child having their own, we're not looking at the cookie cutter strategy. Is also to remember that we are not to compare one child with the other.
Absolutely.
Each child is completely different. They've got a completely different destiny. They have different approaches to things. So they also have different approaches to what you as parents see as the right way to go. To a large extent. So we want to ensure that we take each child and raise them in their own way, in a way that is particularly suitable in their particular cases. And we also looked at the identity of God's seeds, godlike ones. God's children are God's special possessions. And who do they become? They become rulers, they become judges, and we unpacked what it means to be godlike rulers and judges as well. We also noted that these characteristics would inform parents on designing their parenting strategies, because we understand what the future holds. We understand what God has called them to be. And we talked about what parents needed to have in place before their children are born. Now, there's so many questions which come to mind, and we'll completely rely on the wisdom of God to answer them. We have to rely on the wisdom of God because we cannot know everything. The strategy to train them for who they are becoming. Now, note that who they are becoming, not what they currently are. So we're looking at the future, not, how many parents, especially when you're upset with them or you may be frustrated, for example, you complain and you talk about what is now, why don't you go to sleep? You're always so lazy, such kind of words, no. We're talking about looking at the future. Now, that's
we said we train them forward.
For the future, we train them forward. Now, that's not saying we should shun nurturing according to their different stages of development. We are only ensuring that we are conscious of their individual potentials and raise them so as to build their capacities. Now, whilst being raised for the Lord at the temple at 12, or at least that's the age the Bible scholars speculate he would have been, God called Samuel into a personal encounter. Now, he didn't know anything like this before that day. Otherwise, he'd of course have known, how to respond. It wasn't until the third time that God called out to him that it occurred to Eli exactly what was going on. And he told Samuel after that, of course, what to do. Proactively training our children, like we previously said, would help us to train them towards effectively responding in these life encounters.
And we also looked at how to determine the qualities God attributes to our children. This psalmist in Psalm 127 tells us that children are the heritage of the Lord. In other words, they are gifts, they're special possessions. And that's an indication of how God expects us to handle and relate to our children. As gifts, they are valuable and treasured, and as special possessions to be protected from loss or destruction. Now, the dictionary defines a gift as something given to show favor towards someone or to honor an occasion. In this regard, the marriage of two individuals.
The marriage experience.
You're listening to the Marriage Experience program with Ayo Kunle and Bosede Santos.
Now, Psalm 127 also calls children a reward. So we can safely say, for example, that children are the gift God gives to reward couples as they obey his command to be fruitful and multiply. His desire of matrimony is to raise godly seeds. It's not just raise children and hope to retire and have grandchildren. It's to raise godly seeds, because that is leading them in the way, or creating the environment also in the way they ought to go when they grow up.
That's legacy building.
Exactly.
More or less.
Now, of course, a gift is not often earned, nor is it the choosing of the recipient. Otherwise, it would be a wage. You don't get a gift if you worked, for a month. You get a salary, and that is your entitlement. But a gift is something that is given to you, something you have not earned. Now, we can't choose our children, but we receive them as the precious gifts that they are. They are God's legacy to humanity. Understanding these then help us to nurture human beings who have a sense of great worth.
Absolutely.
And who are grounded in their identity.
Yeah, that's so
They
true.
know they belong to God, and nothing can make them feel inadequate or inferior. And that is so very important. I mean, when you think about...
Especially in the world we live in
Exactly.
today.
That's exactly what I'm referring to now. When you think about peer pressure comes up because you are not grounded. Oh, sorry, not you. People are not grounded. They don't because they don't know who they are or who they're supposed to be. Then they tend to follow what looks good. And peer pressure, remember, doesn't just affect children. It affects people living in their 80s as well.
Yeah.
So the most important thing is to raise them to understand who they are. They know they belong to God, and nothing can make them feel inadequate or inferior. Now, back in those days, and unfortunately still today, children and women were classed as less than in the society. And of course, Jesus' mission was to establish a new order. He made it clear to the disciples that children were top priority to God. Children are not less than. Children are not an inconvenience. Children are not. Children are just beautiful.
It's interesting the way it was described even in the Bible, that the way that the disciples shushed away the women and their children. It's kind of like, don't disturb the master. And here the master is I came because of them.
Yeah.
So why are you shushing them away? You can't even enter the kingdom of God except you be like them. So they became the yardstick for engaging with God. So now children indeed are the extension of first God. They are made in his image and likeness, and then their parents who pour into them values and virtues. Children brought up in the way of God, and they're not only demonstrations of God's might and wisdom on the earth, but they are the defense of their parents. Remember, the Bible talks about them standing in the gate and, warding off the enemies. Now, parents who, of course, they've come from separate backgrounds and upbringings, they should address the issue of how they'll raise their children, ideally before the children are born. They should agree on what strategy they'll adopt. Obviously, it wouldn't be down to the nuts and bolts, but a general framework.
Picture,
Yeah, and to begin with, we want to deconstruct the instruction in Proverbs 22 verse 6 regarding raising godly seeds. Reading again from the Expanded Bible, apologies, no apologies, from the expanded Bible version. The scripture says, train children to live the right way in their or his path, referring either to children or to God. And when they are old, they will not stray or depart from it. The writer advises us to, one, train our children up in their own path. In other words, no one size fits all for our children, like we already mentioned. And what was spoken, we said also that what the prophecy that was spoken about Jesus is different from what was spoken about John. And secondly, to train them according to God's path.
Now, as we just heard from Proverbs 22, we talked about training. Now let's zoom in to that word for a moment, and let's get a better understanding of what it means to train. There is a double connotation to it. First, it means to dedicate, and second, it means to inaugurate. To dedicate and to inaugurate. Now let's recap what we said the word inaugurate meant. It means to initiate. It means to introduce. It means to make narrow. In other words, you're focusing and you're starting something with a purpose. Now, the responsibility is then on the parents to live right before the children. Now, let's take a pause.
Sorry, that word narrow. I remember reading somewhere. It's like it's like a topiary where you're trying to make this plant mold into a particular shape. You have a frame, and then as the plant is growing, you're trimming every other bit that's growing outside of that shape. So in other words, you are narrowing it down to conform to that frame that's already been set, so that that plant eventually takes on the shape of that frame that the plant that's guiding the plant to become that shape.
That's very true. Right. So the responsibility of all we're talking about now is on the parents, and it's on the parents to live right before the children. They say children learn more by observing than by instruction. Of course, not just children. We all do. It's not about what is said to you. It is what is about what you observe. Exactly. They say, do as I say. How does it go? Do as I say, not as I do. I mean, you can't expect that to
draconian.
Happen. That cannot happen. The truth is, how do children learn languages? You learn from the way, or they learn from the way other people speak the languages. How do they learn how to walk? How do they learn how to do all these things? Because they see other people doing them. So for us as Christian parents, the bottom line of our training is to help our children understand who God has called them to be in the generic sense. That is the Christian identity, and in a more particular sense, who they were born to be, what they were born to accomplish. Honestly, this is so fundamental and so, what's the word to use? It's so important.
So vital.
It's so vital. Because if this is not established, then the children will begin to seek identity, in the wrong places. And of course, there's so many options out there that are not godly. So we want to ensure that they're rooted and grounded in what they ought to be, in their identity.
So still going on about the identity of our children, like ourselves, they're first and foremost image carriers, which make them equal to and not less than us. That certainly we said was going to be a Selah moment for a lot of parents. They are equal to us and not less than. Though they may be babies, but like a seed, they have the full potential of the full-grown tree, or in this case, the adult in them. And from day one, they should be regarded and related to as that. Understanding that fundamental identity and viewing our children as equals in essence would enable us as parents to nurture them with the dignity that they deserve. Thereby, we're training them also on how to deal with other humans.
And that is really, really important. I mean, it's not just how to deal with their mates at school, but how to live in a world in a very decent way, how to treat other humans.
I mean, just to treat other people with dignity.
So yes, we protect and we also nurture them as they would understand. But the underlying mindset in raising them should be raising their capacity and not their current frame as babies. Again, we are repeating that it's not where they are today, but where they are supposed to be. That we are nurturing who they are becoming. And we're nurturing who they're becoming towards what they're supposed to be. Parenting, like in coaching, is not coaching the problem, but coaching the person. It's not giving them fish, but it's teaching them how to fish. You're training proactively towards what they should be, and not reactively towards who they were not meant to be. As we tend to want to do. You want to look at where you want to go rather than what you want to avoid going to. I mean, this is a training point when it comes to driving, flying, everything. Look, this is what I want to achieve, and that's what you focus on. Not, I want to avoid doing that, and then your concentration is on that.
That reminds me of some mistake I made yesterday. I was trying to say to myself, don't say this. This is what you want to say. And I ended up saying what I didn't want to say.
Right. So remember, we're training them according to their own path. We're raising leaders and must adopt the mindset from day one and hold them in our arms as of who they are.
Leaders.
Yes.
Yeah. So parenting opportunities would, they abound all around us every day, every moment. In fact, Moses told the Israelites in Deuteronomy 6 to always think about these commands that I am giving you today. Teach them to your children at all times. Talk about them when you sit together at home. Talk about them as you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as signs on your arms and on your head so that you remember them. Write them on the wood beside the doors of your houses and on your gates. In other words, we are to seize every opportunity to teach them the things of God, the things that God has revealed to us in his word as characteristics of rulers. We talked about children born into the royal family. They wouldn't know their identity. They wouldn't know what they're supposed to do unless they are taught. And every process of their training is training them towards rulership. Now, remember, we are training our children forward towards unleashing their potentials to build capacity in them to be world changers and legacy builders. And our recommendation again is for would-be parents to do their research and introduce resources that'll help their children engage with the spirit of the word and not just the feel-good moralistic materials. We should help our children to fall in love with God by exposing them to his word, remembering that the covenant we have with God includes our children. We teach them the workings and the benefits of that covenant. And this may seem like hard stuff, but we want to establish them young and train the root of their lives to go deep into God's love.
This has been a really, really enjoyable session. Just recapping what we've covered. And, like we said at the very beginning, we just wish we had access to this program, when shortly after we got married or even before we got married, so we could work out the way to go. But anyway, we just want to thank you again for regularly inviting us into your homes and into your marriages and to be part of your marriage journey. As usual, we appreciate feedback at MXperience@lidiosantos.com. All our episodes are available at our unique YouTube channel. And the handle is at Marriage Experience, Of course, the experience without an E. We also on Apple Podcast, on Spotify, Amazon Music, and everywhere you listen to your podcast. So thank you very much for allowing us into your homes again. And we look forward to spending time with you again next week. If you're listening to this on a Wednesday, on a Monday rather, it's going to be repeated on Wednesday. And do have a beautiful week. God bless you.
Bye for now.
Join Ayo Kunle and Boss Day again next week on The Marriage Experience as they bring God's truth to help you build your marriage God's way. Till then, remember, marriage is God's idea and it is a good thing.
The marriage experience ordained by you.